Kohala Yahweh, Baal Shem Yahweh Shai, Baal Shem Rakaha Kodash. Double honors to my elders, apostles, and the bishops of Great Millstone, or GMS for short. This is where I have learned this truth and where I am still learning this truth. And also shalom to the remnant and the elect of Israel. Lord willing, I am of that number. All right, so we're about to go through part 2 of First Maccabees, the first chapter. All right, starting at verse 20. All right, we're speaking about true history here. All right, so if you're just jumping into this, you can go back to part 1, okay, and catch up to where we're at. All right, this is going to be more so of just a read through and touching on just certain points. All right, also this is in the Good News translation. Okay, so First Maccabees, first chapter, 20th verse. Antiochus persecutes the Jews is the heading in the Good News translation. It reads, in the year 143. Now remember, keep in mind, it says the year 143. It says corresponds to 169 BC. Okay? In the year 143 or 169 BC, after the conquest of Egypt, Antiochus marched with a great army against the land of Israel and the city of Jerusalem. In his arrogance, he entered the temple and took away the gold altar, the lampstand with all its equipment, the table for the bread offered to the Lord, the cups and bowls, the gold fire pans, the curtain, and the crowns. He also stripped all the gold from the front of the temple and carried off the silver and gold and everything else of value, including all the treasures that he could find stored in there. This is including people also. All right? Including people also. Verse 24, it says, then he took it all to his own country. He had also murdered many people and boasted arrogantly about it. There was great mourning everywhere in the land of Israel. Rulers and leaders groaned in sorrow. Young men and young women grew weak. The beauty of our women faded. Every bridegroom sang a funeral song, and every bride sat mourning in her room. All our people were clothed with shame, and our land trembled for them. 2 years later, Antiochus sent a large army from Mysia. It's Mysia. Let's look at this. All right, let me see. Let me see what it says in the King James. This is verse 29 of First Maccabees. And after 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector of tribute unto the cities of Judah, who came unto Jerusalem with great multitude. Hold on, where we at? All right. So, again, verse 29, it says, 2 years later, Antiochus sent a large army from Mysia against the towns of Judea. When the soldiers entered Jerusalem, their commander spoke to the people, offering them terms of peace and completely deceiving them. I remember things happen over and over again. Okay? And these things written aforetime are written for our learning. All right? So these things kept happening. All right? These people that descend from the Greeks, all right? They just keep doing the same thing over and over. All right, again, their commander spoke to the people, offering them terms of peace and completely deceiving them. Then he suddenly launched a fierce attack on the city, dealing it a major blow and killing many of the people. He plundered the city, set it on fire, and tore down its buildings and walls. He and his army took the women and children as prisoners and seized the cattle. Then Antiochus and his forces built high walls and strong towers in the area north of the temple, turning it into a fort. They brought in a group of traitors, Jews, and installed them there. All right, so let's see what this King James says. Verse 34. 33, it says, Then builded they the city of David with a great and strong wall, and with mighty towers, and made it a stronghold for them. And they put therein a sinful nation, wicked men, and fortified themselves therein. All right. So it sounds to me like these were actually uh, their own people. All right. Now let me look something up really quick. It says Antiochus Epiphanes, a Seleucid Greek king, built the Acra fortress in the city of David in Jerusalem. Under the Gavati parking lot, south of the old city walls and the Temple Mount. Man. The purpose of this was to oversee the temple, maintain control over Jerusalem, and quell what they call Jewish priestly rebellion. All right, this was built after Antiochus sacked the city in 168 BC, and then ended up being conquered by Simon Maccabees. Okay, this is what they threw up. They threw up this city and took over the town. All right, to stop the uprising of the true Jews. All right, the true Israelites. All right, so where are we at now? All right. So, verse 35, it says, they also brought in arms and supplies and stored in the fort all the loot that they had taken in Jerusalem. This fort became a great threat to the city. It says the fort was a threat to the temple, a constant evil menace for Israel. Innocent people were murdered around the altar. The holy place was defiled by murderers. The people of Jerusalem fled in fear, and the city became a colony of foreigners. Okay? So they usurped over there, man. They just put other people in place of the actual people that belong there. It says Jerusalem was foreign to its own people. Again, talking about the separation of that land and the people. All right. It says Jerusalem was foreign to its own people, who had been forced to abandon the city. Her temple was empty. Her temple was as empty as a wilderness. Her festivals were turned into days of mourning. Her Sabbath joy into shame. Her honor became an object of ridicule. Her shame was as great as her former glory, and her pride was turned into deepest mourning. Man. It says Antiochus now issued a decree that all nations in his empire should abandon their own customs and become one people. What does that sound like? All right, the things written aforetime were written for our learning. Ecclesiastes 1 and 9. The thing that hath been is that which shall be. All right. It says all the Gentiles and even many of the Israelites submitted to this decree. They adopted the official pagan religion, offered sacrifice to idols, and no longer observed the Sabbath. The king also sent messengers with a decree to Jerusalem and to all the towns of Judea, ordering the people to follow customs that were foreign to the country. He ordered them not to offer burnt offerings, grain offerings, or wine offerings in the temple, and commanded them to treat Sabbaths and festivals as ordinary work days. This dude was flipping everything on his head, man. They were even ordered to defile the temple and the holy things in it. Let's see. Okay. It says they were commanded to build pagan altars, temples, and shrines, and to sacrifice pigs and other unclean animals there. That just reminded me. It just reminded me of a question that was asked to me and another brother today about Paul and his vision. All right, we didn't even get a chance to touch on that, bro. We're gonna have to do that the next time. I can't remember where the conversation went. I know it got away from that though. It says they were forbidden to circumcise their sons and were required to make themselves ritually unclean in every way they could, so that they would forget the law which the Lord had given through Moses and would disobey all its commands. The penalty for disobeying the king's decree was death. The king not only issued the same decree throughout his whole empire, but he also appointed officials to supervise the people and commanded each town in Judea to offer pagan sacrifices. Many of the Jews were ready to forsake the law and to obey these officials. Now, keep in mind, the thing that hath been is that which shall be. All right? And the things written aforetime were written for our learning. Okay? It says they defiled the land with their evil, and their conduct forced all true Israelites to hide wherever they could. On the 15th day of the month of Kislev in the year 145, all right, the year 145 corresponds to 167 BC. So in the year 167 BC, King Antiochus set up the awful horror, right, or the desolation, okay, the desolation, the abomination, desolation. In 167 BC, King Antiochus set up the awful horror on the altar of the temple, and pagan altars were built in the towns throughout Judea. Pagan sacrifices were offered in front of houses and in the streets. Any books of the law which were found were torn up and burned, and anyone who was caught with a copy of the sacred books or who obeyed the law was put to death by order of the king. All right. Keep in mind, man, this history, this is our Greek captivity here. They tried to take this out of the scriptures. It sounds too much like the most recent captivity. All right? And they knew a connection would be made. They did not they didn't expect, because they don't consider the Lord, they didn't count on the Spirit bringing these things out anyway. All right? But the Lord shines a light on all things. Okay? Let me get this verse really quick since it's in my head. Hold on a second. Second Ezra 6 and 28. Man. Oops, hold on a second. All right. Second Ezra chapter 6, and I'll start at 27. It says, "For evil shall be put out, and deceit shall be quenched." All right. These people took these things out of the scriptures, and here it is, the Spirit has us putting all these things together. Okay. And your deception, Esau, is being found out. You are being made bare. Second Ezra chapter 6 and verse 28 now. "As for faith, it shall flourish. Corruption shall be overcome, and the truth, which hath been so long without fruit, shall be declared." Okay? This is what's going on now. All right? The truth is being declared, man. Verse 58 in First Maccabees first chapter says, "Month after month, these wicked people used their power against the Israelites caught in the towns. On the 25th of the month, these same evil people offered sacrifices on the pagan altar erected on top of the altar in the temple. Mothers who had allowed their babies to be circumcised were put to death in accordance with the king's decree. Their babies were hung around their necks, and their families and those who had circumcised them were put to death. All right, but many people in Israel firmly resisted the king's decree and refused to eat the food that was ritually unclean. Now there's a literal sense to this. There's a spiritual sense. All right, allowed their babies to be circumcised, or excuse me, their baby. Let me see. Mothers who allowed their babies to be circumcised were put to death, all right, according with the king's decree, and their babies were hung around their necks, and their families and those who had circumcised them were put to death. Now, all right, when you start learning this truth and walking back into the way of our way, all right, walking back in the ways of the Lord, that's you being uncircumcised or circumcised, okay, in your mind, your heart being circumcised, man, okay? And the same thing is going to come back. Jacob's trouble is going to be even worse than this, all right? And Antiochus did a lot of dirt, man. He had a lot of people put to death in different and diverse ways, man. All right, verse 62 again. But many people in Israel firmly resisted the king's decree and refused to eat food that was ritually unclean. Okay, we refuse to eat that food literally, and on a spiritual sense, we refuse to believe these lies, to take on these different doctrines. All right, including these different names. Okay, the men that I believe are the men of the Lord. All right, this body. Okay, we all speak the same things. We all eat the same spiritual food. 100%. Okay. Verse 63, it says they preferred to die rather than break the holy covenant and eat unclean food, and many did die. In his anger, God made Israel suffer terribly. Okay, and we are still going through that suffering today. All right, but it's going to ramp back up. This is what Jacob's trouble is about. And for all you Israelites that's stuck in them churches, man, y'all going to be shocked by it. We are not being shocked by it. The Lord is preparing us, man. Let me how does it keep doing that? Hold on. All right, John 8 and 32. I'll start at I'll start at 28. Then said Yahushua to them, and Yahushua is whom the world ignorantly calls Jesus among other names. Yahweh is whom the world ignorantly calls God among other names. God is a title and a trait, right? They have names, Yahweh and Yahushua, all right? John 8 and verse 28. Then said Yahushua unto them, when ye have lifted up the Son of Man, which is Yahushua, then shall ye know that I am he, and that I do nothing of myself, but as my Father hath taught me, I speak these things. And that's how you know between a false prophet, all right, and the prophets. Do they speak what the Father spoke? All right, 100%. Okay? Do they give you their own opinion, or do they go by the scriptures? All right, we are a scriptural and faith-based people, man. But people do not like the truth. All right? The truth is not in people, okay? Including Israelites, especially over here in America. John 8 and 29, it says, And he that sent me is with me. The Father hath not left me alone, for I do always those things that please him. As he spoke these words, many believed on him. Then said Yahushua to those Jews which believed on him, If ye continue in my word, then are ye my disciples indeed. And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. All right, we're being comforted, and we're being freed from these cunning fables. Okay, these traditions of men. All right, we're not all the way. We got these chains of darkness on us still, so we're not perfect. We still do sin. Right, but as far as these lies that's been told, hey, the truth is breaking down all these things, man. Okay, so that was just a reading and touching on some very few points we touched on. There's a whole history, and that was just chapter 1. All right, that was only chapter 1. So again, that was First Maccabees, the first chapter in the Apocrypha, something that they tried to hide. You heard how the end of that chapter 1 ended. All right, it sounds too much like this current captivity that we are in. All right, the second leg of Rome. Okay, Rome didn't get defeated. Okay, its deadly wound was healed. This thing started coming back into power in the Renaissance era. All right, Renaissance means rebirth. Rebirth of what? Okay, so after this Greek captivity happened, the Roman captivity happened, and now we're in this one. All right, which is the new, the refreshed leg of the Roman Empire. That's all this is over here, man. This is the last empire that will rule before the righteous, before the righteous rulership comes down. All right, before the righteous rulership takes place on this earth. All right, it is coming. Everything is faithful and true in these scriptures. And you on your way out, Esau. Okay? So, with that, call halal Yahweh, Bahoshem Yahushai, Bahoshem Rakaha Kwadash. Double honors to my elders, apostles, and the bishops of Great Millstone, or GMS for short. This is where I have learned this truth, and where I am still learning this truth. And also shalom to the remnant and the elect of Israel. Lord willing, I'm of that number. Lord willing, we'll see you in the next video. Shalom.